to indict anybody with that. I indict myself with that, if anybody. But the more we fix our eyes on Jesus, the more we can walk on the water, and we can walk over the obstacles, and the storms and the winds calm down. That's just the reality. And so we can't create enough programs to meet everybody's needs, and we can't put into practice all the suggestions. These are great ones tonight. We can't put into practice all the suggestions, but by golly, we can fix our eyes on Jesus and really dig up new ground, and till the soil of our hearts to sink our roots deeper and deeper into Jesus. And so that is our primary focus here. And I believe as we do that, the more we do that, the closer we're going to get to one another, and the more God is going to be able to meet so many of our other needs. So that really is our overall premise. Now, we also want to focus on helping the small groups, the family groups, be the best they can be. So many of you shared about the connections and the relationships. As we've gone group to group, that's the number one thing by far that people have talked about is the connections, the relationships over the years. And that's a beautiful thing. Love, fellowship. And it helps me understand the ones who have friends who've left, how hard it is for them. Because they lost those relationships. They lost those friendships. And they're really hurting right now. So it gives me, a pause and a sensitivity to that. But I love all those connections. And those can't be formed. They can't be formed with everyone in the whole DFW church, over 1,000 people. There's no way we could do that. It's like a brick wall with 1,000 bricks. Every brick can't be close to every other brick. Okay, it's an engineering impossibility. But you can be close to the bricks around you. And that's what the family groups are. And they're just an opportunity for us to go, hey, we got to love everyone. And I love those congregationals. We're like, let's go see our old friends there and let's cross-pollinate. But then the people day in and day out that you're living life together with, man, that's where all the one another passages and commands can be put into practice in a group like this. And if it's really functioning and really strong, then we can do anything. And so I want to look just briefly with that in mind, tying together Jesus and our focus on small group by looking at Jesus' very first small group. And so in Mark chapter 3, and don't worry, this isn't going to be a big, long lesson, right?
Oh, come on.
In Mark 3, in verse 13, let's start here. Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him, and that he might send them out to preach, and have authority to drive out demons. These are the 12 he appointed. Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter. Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter. James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. To them he gave the name Boanerges, which means sons of thunder. Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. Okay, I love this passage, and it's referenced in the other, a few of the other Gospels as well. Jesus starts with this challenge. He's one guy. He's had his 30 years of getting ready, and now it's go time. And his mission is to provide a sin remedy, a remedy to the sin problem that's going to be, the solution, saving eternal lives, forgiving sins. So he's got that mission, but then he's got to create a movement that's going to be strong enough to expand all over the world and reach all nations, and that's concentrated enough that it's going to pass on to every generation after him until whenever he chooses the end of time to be. So to have this multi-international, multicultural, international movement and multi-generational for thousands of years, and you're one guy and you've got to do that. That is a daunting task. And so what's his very first step after going and spending time with the Lord and slugging it out with Satan in the desert? The very first thing he does, he goes, man, I got to start a family group. And that's what he did right there. He has these 12 men, and we know from watching The Chosen that there was a bunch of women there too. Okay, now we know that from the gospel. Okay? But it's nice to see it in The Chosen, okay? It's in the Bible. But I love all the women too, and sometimes we leave out all these awesome women that were traveling with Jesus and serving Jesus. Don't leave the women out. Jesus didn't leave the women out. And so there's this incredible group that's like his family group. Yeah. And that literally was his plan. This group of, 20 whatever people that are just gathering with him, and they went on, and that was his plan, to set up a movement that would expand throughout the whole world and endure for all generations. And here we are, more than 2,000 years later, doing exactly what he did with that group on that mountainside 2,000 years ago. And you got to think, even with all of our problems, Jesus is up there going, amen. That's what I was hoping for. That's what I was envisioning. And just think of how many little groups like this he can see all over the planet. Yeah. And that's just exciting. Yeah. So when we look at his group, he sets this thing up. We got to know Jesus knew what he was doing. He knew how to major in the majors and minor in the minors. He knew how to start a family group that was going to be successful. And I see a few key dimensions to this family group of Jesus that I think are very imitatable in our family groups here today in Dallas. The first dimension that I see is connection. He called to him those he wanted, which is kind of sad, but that means there's a lot of people he didn't want. It's like, it came down to, okay, last one, the final rose, who am I going to give it to? Okay, Peter, you made the cut. Like, there's somebody else. I don't know who was number 13 that didn't make it, but there's some that didn't make it. He stayed up all night and chose these 12, and he called to him those he wanted, and they came to him, and he called them to be together. And it says that they might be with him. Yeah. That's a cool phrase, that they might be with him. And by being with him, they're with each other. Yeah. And then you look for the next 3 years, and what did they do? They were with Jesus and with each other. Yeah. Yeah. In every circumstance and setting imaginable. Mm-hmm. Like, what did they not do together? I mean, they saw funerals together. Mm-hmm. They partied together. They went to weddings together. They drank together. They ate together. They fasted together. They fished together. Mm-hmm. They prayed together. They preached together. They cried together. They laughed together. I don't really say laugh, but some things were really funny. I mean, they did a lot. They just did life together. Right. I love that connection. And so when we think about family groups being successful, to me, of course, the foundation is Jesus. But it's the connection to one another and the vulnerability. Loved your example tonight. The realness, the rawness. The just kind of saying, hey, here's where I'm at. I need you, brother. I need you, sister. How can I help? What can I do? Yeah. Boom, that connection. Yeah. All the one another passages. With the family group leaders and anyone else who wanted to join this last Sunday, we talked about this dimension, connection, and how we can grow in it. I made a list of all the one another commands in the New Testament. And we broke them down into groups, and I encouraged all the leaders and all those there to go through those dimensions and see which ones are not being employed in our family groups. Which ones are we good at? Which ones are we not so good at? Let's try to grow in putting all of them into practice so we can all experience connection. Yeah. So I see that as the first dimension. Then the second dimension I see is transformation. Transformation. He called in those he wanted, and he wanted them as they were. He accepted them as they came, and they were there with him. But was he content with their present state? Far from it, right? He said, come follow me, and I'm going to make you into something. I'm going to transform you. It says right here in the passage that he gave them special powers. He gave them authorities. He started giving them things that they didn't have before they knew him. And I love just watching their lives transform over the 3.5 years. And there's only scant references. I mean, the Gospels are 20-something chapters. That's 3.5 years. Think of how much happened that we never know about. And so much of the material, four Gospels, so much of it in the Synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's the same, repeated. There's so much we don't know, but so much transformation that took place.
Right.
That you see Peter going from the fisherman to in Acts chapter 2, standing up and preaching to thousands and thousands of people. You see John having the nickname Boanerges, sons of thunder, because he's calling down fire from heaven. And then you see him in 1 John just writing, dear friends, love one another, love one another, love one another. It's like he's called the apostle of love. What a transformation. And you see that in most of them, just this character arc. And The Chosen does a good job of showing that character arc. But it's transformation. And I think sometimes the longer we've been around the church, the more we lose sight of this vital dimension of a Jesus family group. Yeah. We can get good at connection, and we need to get better at it. But sometimes our transformation is more like this in those first few years. And then we just start approaching Jesus asymptotically, okay? You remember that? Like, you're like getting closer and closer to the graph, Ed knows, like it starts like this, and then it's just like, and you're like, between every point, there's a point. And you're kind of getting closer, but at a more gradual pace than when you started. That's what happens the longer we've been Christians, and it's a dangerous thing. None of us are even close to being like Jesus, but we get to a point that we level off. And then we go, well, what am I focused on? Let's have an issue. Let's have a thing. Let's have my thing, your thing. You grab something, I'll grab. Let's point. And that's when we lose sight, because there's so much for us to be transformed in, so much for us to change, so much. Help me, Jesus, to be more like you. If only I could be like you in this area, in this area, in this area. Wow, if we're helping each other to transform like that, if we're listening to the Spirit, doesn't the Spirit try to transform us with ever-increasing glory into the image of Jesus? All that's from the Lord, who is the Spirit. He's trying to do that. We speak the truth in love so that we will grow up into Him who's the head. Yeah. Remember in the old days, some of you that were around, you remember in fellowship, the Bible was just open? Everybody's Bible was just open. It's like, and you're just like, share this verse with you. Bro, I want to really inspire you. Could you do this? Hey, I want to challenge you. Could you do that? And like, transformation is what we're all after. How can we grow? But now you look at yourself, and I don't really know you all that well, and ask in this group, what's the transformation expectation in this group? What's the transformation experience? What's our track record in transformation? How much do you look back like a growth chart in the back of the pantry door, of your kids? You're like, there's the line when they were 4, and then there, and for me, capped about right there, But you can see the lines. Like, can you do that with the growth of this group? That you go, man, remember where Steve was at 2 years ago? Wow, look at Steve now. And we're just seeing the pencil lines because we're just transforming to be more and more like Jesus. That's what we envision. That's what Jesus envisioned taking place. Connection, transformation, and then I see as the final thing, and really that tied it all together, expansion. That He might send them out to preach. They'd be with them. He'd transform them. And then He'd send them. And He said that. That was His vision. From the very first meeting. Hey, guys, I want you to know that here's my plan. I'm going to gather you together, if you can be with me, and then I'm going to send you out to preach. And even the name that He gave them, it says He had this group together and He designated them apostles. Anybody know what apostle means? Sent. One who sent. It's one who sent. That's all it means. So, like, you were just called. Hey, guys, come together. Hey, we're going to have a meeting. What are we going to have a meeting about? I'm going to give everyone a T-shirt. What's it say in the back? One who is sent. Like, message, you're going to be sent. Why are we gathering here? Because you're going to be sent. But what direction are we going? You're going to be sent. But I have things to talk about. You're going to be sent. This is just, it was in their DNA from day one, literally. You're going to be sent. Yes, saved. Yes, loved. Yes, transformed. Yes, connected. And yes, sent. It was so clear. And you remember, Ed was referencing it, you remember the days that it was so clear. And I'm not talking about just, I'm going on a mission team. No, I remember those days. I remember the days everyone had a world map, okay, when I was in campus ministry, and it was like, what nation are you going to? I remember wanting to go to Australia because I liked Olivia Newton-John, I think. You know, it's probably part of it. But I wanted to go to Australia, plant a church in Australia, you know. Like, we just wanted to have a vision. Where are you going? Because we knew being a disciple means you're sent.
Yeah.
Some people had a vision of going to Jackson, Mississippi. Great, more power to it. But everyone knew we're being sent. That's just what it was.
I have a best friend. Seriously. Or a Western.
What a joke. Go there. Feeling froggy jump. And so I love that. It really, like, unity for the sake of unity doesn't work. Connection for the sake of connection doesn't work. Hey, let's all be connected. Like, there's not enough power to unify us. We're too diverse. Diversity is our greatest strength, and it's our greatest problem. Yeah. Like, when you have a neighborhood church, they're all the same color. They all talk about the same stuff. They all live in the same area. They have the same hobbies and stuff. It's easy to kind of be united. But man, you gather together so many different minds and experiences, church backgrounds, racial issues, nations, languages, and you throw us all together and say, now be unified. It'll never happen. It hasn't happened anywhere in the world. But you give us a purpose to fight for and work for. And it's like, hey, let me help you out. Hey, you know, hand me another brick. Hey, let's go here. Like, it makes all the difference when everybody's assembled with a common purpose. That unifies. Jesus is our purpose, and expansion is our goal, to seek and to save the lost. That just is the plan of the church. I love seeing, by the time Jesus left 3.5 years later, it says the number of disciples was 120, about 120. And then a couple days later, or a couple pages later, you see that it was over 3,000, or around 3,000. I don't know how much they rounded up. That looks like about 3,000 baptized that day. But there was about 3,000. That's what the Holy Spirit says, baptized that first day. And then you see not only the number of disciples expanding, but then you see the number of churches expanding. And you see the church going from Jerusalem to Judea, and then to Samaria, and then to the ends of the earth, like it says in Acts 1. And you're seeing churches multiplying. You're seeing family groups multiplying. Expansion. I love, how many people were baptized in the 90s here? Raise your hand. Look around, okay? How many were baptized in the 2010s?
You got an old group here.
20s.
Yeah, a bunch of old fogies.
And listen to that. Like, there's old fogies around here that have not yet been baptized in Christ. And I don't mean just our church. So it's been, what, a decade and a half? And I'm not saying, I'm sure you've seen people baptized, but I'm saying, man, there's like been a lot of years without a lot of expansion. As we go around to the churches, like the 90s were hot. I mean, everybody's like 94. 94 was an especially good year. I don't know what happened then, but so there you go.
In this church, in this particular
so far.
church.
But there's so much in the 90s. That was expansion. And that was a long time ago. They're still faithful. But there's not as many in lesser time. And you go, what? There's even more people. Groups. Yeah, even in younger groups. Like, it's a problem. And so I'm not saying we need to do what we did then. There's a lot of things I never want to do that we did then. But expansion with the right passion in the right way, man, that's Jesus' vision. Because the lost people are his kids too. And, you know, he's the teacher going, okay, fire drill. Where's this kid? Where's this kid? He's not content if you go, hey, don't push me for numbers. As long as I'm outside and saved, you know, that's good. He goes, go back in and get my other kids. Like, he wants all the kids saved. He wants all the souls saved. So I really get excited when I think about, okay, as we figure things out, as we heal, as we get better, wow, then all the combined knowledge we have. All the years, all the decades. Man, if we went around the decades, each person is representing a few decades of following the Lord.
Wow.
Multiple church plantings, multiple nations, multiple decades per disciple. Put all that together, you got a big ball of power right there. You got a lot of power to drive out demons and perform many miracles. Think of all the miracles you've seen.
Yeah, so many.
All the prayers you've had answered. All the glories you've heard. Wow. God expects a lot from us. And God can do a lot through us. I talked to my friend the other day, Mark Ottenweller. Some of you may know Mark Ottenweller. He called me with a good conversation.
My spiritual mom, Lynn, that helped me become a Christian, is married to my mom.
Yeah,
Many of you know Lynn.
he was like the
Bailey.
ABC News Person of the Week one year when he was doing missionary work in Africa. He's a doctor. He was my doctor when I was a young student, a young disciple at LSU. And he was married to Diane Ottenweller. Lynn Beatty, who studied the Bible with her, was married to Barry Beatty. They went on the mission team to New York. And Barry died. He passed away of a brain tumor. Diane, Mark's wife, died. She had a sudden heart attack. Barry and Lynn, Mark and Lynn, the two couples had been best friends for decades. And then eventually they fell in love and they got married. It's just a beautiful story. But anyway, they're in Georgia. He called me the other day. We were chatting about something. And he goes, yeah, I just came back from lunch with a group. And I said, well, who was it? He said, you wouldn't believe it. He goes, our family group planted a church. He goes, I don't mean we helped plant a church. We planted a church. And I don't mean just split and create another family group. He goes, we literally planted a church. They're in Georgia. They planted a church just south of Buffalo, New York. They're like, you know what our family groups want to do? We're going to plant a church in New York. And they did. They just, from their family group, they started a church. And I'm like, I don't remember that happening even back in the glory days. Like, that's an even greater thing. And it just made me go, wow, what more things can Jesus do? Like when he says, you will do even greater. He says, anyone who believes in me will do what I've been doing. But then he goes, you'll do even greater things than these. Because I'm going to the Father. Even greater things than Jesus? That's what happens because he's going to the Father. It's like Luke doing greater things than Obi-Wan because now he's a part of the Force. I mean, that's what Jesus kind of did. Okay, I don't want to get like too weird, but that's what Jesus did. He goes, now you're going to have extra power because I'm going to the Father. So to see even greater things, not even lesser things because now we're past our prime, but even greater things because he's going to the Father. That's my vision for our lives. That's my vision for all of our lives. But that expansion, how's your expansion going? We're really excited to move into a new neighborhood so we can meet people when it's like normal to meet new people. You know, it's not like, who are you? Are you coming to, you go into the back cave, you know, the door closes and you never see them. But so in our neighborhood, it's brand new. There's a lot of new builds. And we go out and Barry loves to go, you know, let me bake a few things of brownies and let's go meet the neighbors and give them brownies. And, you know, it sounds really good. Until it's like an evening, you're tired. It's like you just like want to kind of chill a little bit. And she's like, "You ready to go around and meet the neighbors?" I'm like, "How about tomorrow?" This last week. That's literally what happened. How about tomorrow? And she goes, "Okay, you know, tomorrow." Then it was like 6 o'clock. She wasn't home yet, or 5:30 something. She wasn't home. I kid you not. I had this thought, maybe she forgot. And I was kind of excited that maybe she forgot. I'm just confessing. And then she came in, and I thought, I'm not going to remind. And she goes, you about ready to go out? I'm like, yeah, babe, let's go. I really didn't want to. I'm an evangelist. I didn't want to. We all got a sinful nature. I just preach, you know, on Sunday or whatever. But I mean, we bake the brownies. We go out, meet these young families, and get invited into their homes. And you got,
They're awesome.
it just, you know, the headache went away. I felt so happy afterwards. It just works when you do what Jesus called you to do.
Yeah.
Everything comes alive. It's just, it's better. Life's better.
Good. Good
Guys,
stuff.
this is a rich group.
Oh, yeah.
You're
We're not
rich.
brownies. I love that idea.
No pizza.
You have so much to offer.
Yeah.
Everyone's so different. You have different things to offer. But connection with one another and the Lord, transformation with ever increasing glory, and expansion. to reach people that we haven't reached for years, to think of who's going to be in here that's not here now,
Yes.
to touch lives and be used by God. You know, for me to see Dave, I didn't expect David to be here in this
That's so
ministry. I'm like,
inspiring.
I know that guy. Like, that was the
Fires
very
me
first
up.
church we ever led. I was 26 years old.
Come on.
We came into
Let's
town.
go.
We got into town on like
Expansion.
a Tuesday, and we're like, we got to have a baptism this week. I go, who's the farthest along the studies? They're like, well, there's this guy, Dave Payne, but he's got a really hard heart. I'm like, bring the boy to me. And it was just a miracle. It was a miracle of God. And, I mean, and he's still here, like all those years later.
Dave is very inspiring.
It's so
You're a
inspiring.
gift to us.
And I know all of you have Daves
That's
like
right.
that out there, but there's more Daves out there.
There are more
right?
Daves out there. Come on.
So, guys, let's get excited about being a Jesus family group.
Yeah, Jesus.
If we have that connection, the transformation, expansion, God's going to be so glorified. And then you know what? I think this group has so much to offer. I think you'll actually inspire the other family groups. But they'll go, man, you see what's happening in that McKinney, was it BC? Whatever, in that McKinney group? Yeah, you see what's happening there? Wow. And they're like older people. And look how zealous they are. And look at their connection. Look at how they're transformed. Look at their expansion. Really, people look, and then they start coming out of their caves and cisterns and foxholes, and they join the battle in hot pursuit. That's the way God brings about a miracle. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. But if we're the few that get the thing going, man, I know others will follow. So we're excited for you. We're eager to see it happen. We're here to serve you. And I look forward to being Jesus' family group together. What are your thoughts? Just quick, we don't want to go long. Quick response. Just